raised.
So
that's what I want.
We're going to get to that actually in a moment about Social Security, payroll tax cap, and so many other things.
I couldn't care less about the title. I didn't run for any public office in the first half century of my life. This is all about what good I can do for the people.
So let me ask you this. Why make the switch to the U.S. Senate? Why now? Why you?
Well, because of all the good things we've done already in the House and how much more we can do in the Senate. I've passed 26 bills through the House, passed by the House, passed by the Senate, signed into law by the President in the last 3 years alone. You know how many of my Democratic opponents passed?
Patrick Murphy, how many?
Zero. And I passed 54 amendments through the House, which is hard to do when you're a Democrat and every time there's a party line vote you lose. But I've passed 54 amendments through the House. You know how many Patrick has passed?
How many?
7.
Let me ask you this. Why do you think there's, besides the obvious fact that you're both Democrats and you're fighting, okay?
Well, you can stop right there, okay? Patrick was a Republican his whole life until he ran for Congress 3 years ago.
We had him on the show, and we asked him about that, and he was very, very clear about that. But why do you think there's such beef between the two of you? It seems like it's more...
Because he's a faker. That's
why would you call him a faker,
faker,
Congressman?
Well, my goodness, he gave $2,300 to Mitt Romney, and he's pretending now to be a Democrat. He voted to force the president to license the Keystone Pipeline 7 times. He voted to condemn the president over the Bowie-Bergdahl swap. He voted to hurt Secretary Clinton as one of only 3 Democrats in the House right now who voted to investigate the so-called Benghazi incident. Time after time after time, he's been faking people out, pretending to be a Democrat when actually he's a hardcore Republican.
When he came on the show, he actually brought a huge binder, 986 pages, okay, of the Office of Congressional Ethics. I don't have all those pages because we'd run out of ink, and, you know, we're trying to save trees here at News 13. But part of the...
He printed them out.
Part of the nature of the alleged violation, I have part of the official document, is that Representative Alan Grayson receives compensation from or permitted the use of his name by, an entity that provides professional services involving a fiduciary relationship during his congressional service. Then he may have violated federal law, House rules, and standards of conduct.
You left out a very important word, which is if. If, okay. If is a very important word.
Well, and
I didn't do that.
I want to be very clear that that's from the Office of Congressional Ethics, okay, the OCE. This is all public record, folks, so you can find it. You provided documentation, and you were very, very clear to say...
Disprove the allegation.
Correct. Right. You were very clear to point out that in your supporting documents that the OCE staff and Representative Grayson's political opponent and the resulting numerous leaks of confidential information in gross violation of both OCE rules and any conceivable standard of objectivity and impartiality. And right before that statement, you say that there's some issues that must be addressed about the collaboration between the OCE staff and some other folks on the other side.
Well, let's be specific about Patrick Murphy's collaboration. Patrick Murphy instigated this by paying lawyers over $10,000 to write a complaint, which he then put in the name of a flunky of his name, Celeste Bush. So he instigated it. He actually, as you point out, corrupted it by having leaks passed between his chief of staff and the OCE.
I want to be
now he's tried to exploit it by going on your show and talking about it, when the fact is that he's the one who started it all.
And that's why we're glad that you're here to voice your concerns on it. We talked about the 986-page report from the Office of Congressional Ethics. However, I want to be very clear here that the House Ethics Committee is truly the only entity with formal powers to sanction House members, and they have a 70-plus page report where they say this investigation, the fact they're looking into it, does not itself indicate that any violation has occurred or reflect any judgment on behalf of the committee.
This is
so they're saying we're still looking into this.
No, they actually have not formed an investigative subcommittee, which means they're not looking into it. This is a sad and pathetic
But I have this. It says that they are.
Well, I mean, let's read from it, okay?
Okay, it's right here. This is right here. You've got part of the statement from this 70-plus page document that's not final. They're just looking into it. And they're being very clear that they're not pointing fingers at you. They're just looking at this potential violation, but they're clearing you of anything thus far.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Let's move on.
Let's not move on, because what this reflects is a pathetic attempt by an opponent who's done nothing for anybody to basically smear me. When's the last time you heard Patrick Murphy say anything about anything positive he's done that wasn't a blatant lie? You know, he's running against somebody who, like me, has been described by Business Insider as the most productive member of Congress. He's running against somebody like me, who Time magazine says is a standout member of Congress in a do-nothing Congress. He's a do-nothing congressman. So the only way that he feels he can make any progress in this race, he can't talk about Social Security, he can't talk about Medicare. He said both those things should be cut. He can't talk about the minimum wage. He can't talk about health care for all. All he can do is attack me personally and unfairly.
And I want to be very clear. Anytime we've reached out to you, you've always answered our calls. You haven't hidden from us. You don't deny us coming on the show. You're always, you always show up whenever we ask you to show up.
Yes,
so.
And I come here with good news. The good news of all the good things that I've done. Just in the past month alone, the President signed a Grayson bill into law that prevents foreclosures against veterans in their first year out of service.
It's a big problem in Central Florida.
Yes, of course. And we have people. What's the one thing you can say about someone who's leaving the service? He's unemployed. Okay, so I passed a bill to prevent foreclosures against veterans in their first year after government service. Also, right now, we've got approval for another bill that prevents what's called the widow tax. There's a sad situation right now. If somebody dies while they're in military service and they've got both an insurance policy and a death benefit, the death benefit gets reduced dollar per dollar by the amount of the insurance policy that they paid for. Now, the Grayson bill, which has been approved now, repeals that for the next 2 years. These are very important things in people's lives.
That's significant. You know what I think it's interesting? There's, we'll just end it at that this whole Grayson and Murphy clash is not a new thing. Last year, there was this conservative group called the Club for Growth who was putting out a commercial, an ad that was on TV. Let's go ahead and watch that together, and then we'll get your reaction to it.
Two Florida Democrats in Congress with very different views. Alan Grayson opposes the Export-Import Bank, which spends billions of tax dollars on a handful of giant corporations. Patrick Murphy supports the XM Bank and wants to funnel billions more to corporate fat cats. Congress will soon vote. Tell your Democratic members of Congress to side with Grayson, not Murphy, and stop the Export-Import Bank's outrageous corporate giveaways.
What's interesting here, it's a conservative group, and they're pushing this ad where they're saying people should vote, should support you and your stance on this, even though this is a conservative group. So why is a conservative group picking sides in a Democratic race?
Because Patrick Murphy is in favor of these corporate giveaways, as they describe, and let me describe what they are, okay? We're talking here about the XM Bank, which is the most perfect form of corporate welfare you're ever going to see. Every dollar that the XM Bank issues goes to a foreign corporation. We are literally subsidizing foreign corporations with U.S. government taxpayer money in order to compete against and beat American corporations. Patrick Murphy's in favor of that. I'm against it. Now, the XM Bank happens to be a good example of what the Club for Growth is against, which is corporate welfare for foreign entities. Every single dollar goes abroad.
Well,
why are we doing that?
Bottom line is the conservative group saying that you're the guy that people should vote for. Let me ask you about something that you called me. You called me on my cell phone and said, Beth, we have to talk about this. And everybody is talking about it now, but you've been talking about this for months, and that is the financial crisis in the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico.
Yes.
We're talking about $71 billion in bond debt. The governor, Alejandro Garcia Padilla, has been very vocal and went on TV and spoke to the Puerto Rican people on a Sunday night and said, guess what? We're not going to make this $422 million payment that was due May 1st.
Right.
They did not.
They didn't.
Very serious problem right now. So my question to you is this. Should there be an oversight board, for some debt restructuring for Puerto Rico, or should there be a taxpayer bailout for Puerto Rico?
Neither.
Okay.
What there should be is an anti-discrimination against Puerto Rico, which is the foundation of this crisis. Every year, Puerto Ricans pay an extra $4 billion for their health care that they wouldn't have to pay if they lived in any state. And year after year, as that accumulates, that's what causes the debt.
Should they be a state? Should they be a state and these problems would go away?
That's for the people of Puerto Rico to decide. But I will tell you that there is massive discrimination by the federal government against the people of Puerto Rico. We have discrimination in health care. We have discrimination against benefits. We have discrimination in transportation. And we have discrimination in bankruptcy law. And that is the cause, but ultimately the potential cure for what Puerto Rico is facing right now. If we ended discrimination against Puerto Rico, then a lot of these financial problems would disappear overnight. And Puerto Rico shouldn't have to make a sacrifice in order to achieve equality.
There have been some groups in Puerto Rico that are saying, you know what, we don't